We are often told that the most beautiful sound in any language is the sound of our own name. It is the first gift we are given, a verbal anchor that hooks us to the world before we even have the words to describe it. So when someone looks you in the eye, someone you've met, someone you've shared a conversation or a coffee with, and their mind goes blank, it feels like a small, quiet erasure. It feels like a lapse in care. We've been conditioned to believe that memory is a measurement of interest, that if you truly valued someone, their name would be etched into your mind like a monument. But what if the inability to hold on to a name isn't a sign of indifference, but a symptom of a mind that is simply trying too hard to survive the present moment? If you are the person who constantly fumbles for a name that was given to you only seconds ago, you know the heat that rises in your chest, the immediate internal apology, the frantic mental searching through a filing cabinet that seems to have been tipped over. You aren't cold and you aren't unintelligent. In fact, the psychology of forgetting names often points to a brain that is far more occupied with the weight of the human soul than the labels we attach to it. You are likely experiencing a phenomenon where the label and the essence of a person are stored in two entirely different rooms of your consciousness, and the hallway between them is shrouded in fog. Think of a name as a thin, brittle post-it note stuck to the outside of a massive, complex library. To the outside world, that note is the entry point. But for you, the moment you meet someone, you weren't looking at the note. You were looking at the architecture of the building. You were looking at the way their eyes shift when they mention their hometown. You were listening to the cadence of their voice, subconsciously scanning for safety, for warmth, or for hidden sorrow. While everyone else is memorizing the who, you were drowning in the how. You were experiencing the person's energy so intensely that the arbitrary collection of vowels and consonants that make up their name feels secondary, almost intrusive. It's a form of emotional over-focus. You are trying to read the book before you've even checked the title. In psychology, we often discuss the next-in-line effect. It is a quiet, cognitive thief. When you are introduced to someone new, your brain is rarely in a state of passive reception. Instead, it is performing a high-wire act of social survival. You are thinking about your posture, your handshake, the way your own voice sounds, and most importantly, what you are going to say next so you don't appear awkward. In this state of performance anxiety, the name enters your ear and immediately falls out the other side because there was no hook waiting for it. Your mental hands were already full. You weren't ignoring them. You were too busy trying to be enough for them. This struggle often traces its roots back to a childhood where social stakes were unexpectedly high. For many who struggle with names, there was a period in their early development where reading the room wasn't a choice, it was a necessity. Perhaps you grew up in a household where moods were unpredictable, where the atmosphere could shift from calm to storm in a matter of seconds. In those environments, the brain learns to prioritize threat assessment over data collection. You weren't taught to remember what people were called. You were taught to remember how they felt. You became an expert at detecting the subtle tightening of a jaw or the slight edge in a tone of voice. This creates a specific type of cognitive wiring. As an adult, when you meet someone, your primary drive is to establish an emotional baseline. Is this person safe? Are they judging me? Do I need to be small or big here? By the time your brain concludes its safety check, the name, that fleeting, arbitrary piece of data, has already evaporated. It was discarded by your subconscious because, in the grand scheme of survival, a name doesn't keep you safe. Understanding a person's intent does. You are a contextual processor in a world that demands categorical efficiency. We must also consider the invisible wall of social perfectionism. For the name forgetter, the name isn't just a word, it's a test. And because you are so afraid of failing the test, you create a self-fulfilling prophecy of cognitive interference. The moment someone starts to introduce themselves, a voice in the back of your head whispers, "Don't forget it. Don't forget it this time." This internal noise acts like static on a radio. You are so focused on the act of remembering that you lose the capacity to actually listen. You are staring at the person's lips moving, watching the name form, but the static of expectation drowns it out. You end up remembering the worry of forgetting more clearly than the name itself. This is a form of micro-trauma that repeats in every hallway, every office, and every party. Each time it happens, the shame reinforces the wall. You start to see yourself as broken or scatterbrained, which only increases the cortisol in your system during the next introduction. And, as we know, cortisol, the stress hormone, is the natural enemy of the hippocampus, the part of your brain responsible for forming new memories. You are literally stressed into a state of temporary amnesia. The more you care about the person, the more you want to get it right, the more likely you are to get it wrong. There's a beautiful, albeit painful irony here. People who forget names are often the most deeply empathetic individuals in the room. You are the one who will remember a story someone told you 3 years ago. You'll remember their fear of heights, the way they take their tea, or the specific grief they carry regarding their father. You remember the soul data. But because the label data is missing, you walk through life feeling like a fraud. You feel like you are failing at the most basic human connection, when in reality, you are engaging in a deeper, more labor-intensive form of connection than most. Think of the Baker-Baker paradox. It's a classic psychological study where people are shown a photograph of a man. Group A is told the man's last name is Baker. Group B is told the man is a baker. When tested later, Group B, the ones who were told his profession, remembered the information far better than Group A. Why? Because a baker brings up mental images of bread, the smell of yeast, the heat of the oven, and the flour on an apron. It has a semantic web. But a name, Mr. Baker, is just a cold, isolated island in the mind. It has no meaning. It connects to nothing. If you struggle with names, it's because your brain refuses to store islands. It only wants to store webs. You are looking for the bread, the heat, and the flour in every person you meet, and you find it hard to care about the isolated island of a name that has no inherent meaning. You are a hunter of substance in a world of symbols. You are searching for the why of a person, while the who remains a flickering neon sign that keeps burning out. But this cognitive drift carries a heavy price. It creates a sense of social dysmorphia, where you see yourself as being further away from people than you actually are. You begin to avoid people because the anxiety of the second meeting becomes too much to bear. You worry that if you ask for their name again, you are admitting that they didn't matter to you. So you stay silent. You use "hey, you" or "my friend," creating a linguistic buffer that keeps everyone at arm's length. The very empathy that makes you forget names is the same thing that makes you feel the sting of their potential disappointment. We have to ask, what does it say about our society that we have prioritized the tag over the text? We live in a world of high-speed indexing where we want to file people away into neat little boxes as quickly as possible. To forget a name is to disrupt the social filing system. It's a glitch in the social matrix. But what if we looked at it through a different lens? What if we saw it as a mental overload of appreciation? Consider the empty well metaphor. Imagine your conscious mind is a well. Most people have a shallow but clear well. They can see the names at the bottom easily. But your well is incredibly deep. When someone drops their name into your well, it has to travel through layers of emotional analysis, past memories of similar faces, through the silt of your own social anxieties, and down into the dark water of your subconscious. By the time you try to pull the bucket back up, the name has drifted. It hasn't disappeared, it's just submerged under the weight of everything else you've perceived about that person. The deep analysis of this behavior often reveals a disorganized attachment to the concept of identity. If you grew up feeling like your own identity was fluid or suppressed, if you had to be a different person for different people just to stay afloat, you might subconsciously view names as temporary or unimportant. You learned early on that who a person says they are is rarely who they actually are. A name is a mask. And your brain, in its infinite protective wisdom, has decided that it no longer has time for masks. It is looking for the face underneath. But this consequence is a life lived in a state of ambiguous loss. You are losing connections before they even begin.
You are standing in the middle of a social circle, surrounded by strangers with familiar souls. You know them, yet you don't. You feel the heat of their presence, but you cannot call them toward you. It's a lonely way to exist, to be a library of unlabeled books. You know the stories by heart, but you can never find the one you need when the world is watching. And as we sit in this realization, we have to look at the pivot, the moment we stop blaming the brain for its failing and start understanding the survival strategy that once was so necessary. Because the truth is, you didn't start forgetting names because you were lazy. You started forgetting them because you were overwhelmed by the world, and your mind had to start choosing what to carry. The weight of that choice, what to carry and what to let fall, is the quiet burden of the hyper-perceptive. For years, you've likely looked at your inability to recall a name as a defect.